3 years ago, I made a video showing you how to paint over wood paneling, and since then, it's helped thousands of people transform their home. But today, we're going to revisit that video and see what we can do better. Now, whether your paneling is the real wood or that old school fake stuff, I'll show you exactly what works, what doesn't, and the best way to get a flawless, long-lasting finish. So let's jump into it. Now, before we even think about painting, prep is the key to making sure that your paint sticks and lasts for years. Step 1. Clean your surface. Wood paneling tends to get really dirty and collect grease and grime, so I recommend using a deglosser and degreaser such as Crud Cutter, and this helps break down the grime and removes the glossy finish so that we don't have to sand too much later. Step 2. Light sanding. Now, to help the primer stick, we're going to lightly scuff sand the surface using a 150 grit sandpaper. Here I'm using a radial sander, but you can also use a fine sanding sponge. Now, this radial sander only costs about $20 to $30 depending on where you're getting it. However, it's much easier and much faster than doing everything by hand using a sanding sponge. Step 3. Wipe down the surface. After sanding, we're going to wipe down the surface again using a damp rag, and what we're doing is removing all of the dust and all of the debris that's left from the sanding, and your rag should sort of look like this when you're done. Step 4 is a pro secret, and that's delint your roller sleeve. Before painting and priming, always delint your roller sleeve with some masking tape, and this is going to prevent any loose fibers from getting stuck in your finish. Now let's talk about priming your surface. In my previous video, I was using an oil-based primer, and I told you that oil-based primers will give you the best adhesion and they will stop tannin bleed. However, some of you commented saying that oil-based primers are not available in your state and you don't know how to get to them. So in this video, I'm going to show you an alternative that you can use to get the best adhesion and still stop tannin bleed. Now, you always have to prime your wood paneling first before painting it, and no, a paint and primer in one does not work. Here I'm using a product by Sherwin-Williams, which is called Extreme Bond Primer, and this is a waterborne urethane modified primer, and it's the next best thing if you can't get your hands on some oil-based primer. Now, if you do end up with some tannin bleed, which you can tell by these coffee looking like stains, you can use a aerosol can, and these should be readily available even in the states where you can't buy gallons of oil-based primer. However, if you can't get them in the store, you might be able to get them on Amazon. I'm going to leave a link in the description to where you can find them. Just spray it onto the tannin bleed, and that will lock in the stain and make sure that it doesn't show up in your final finish. Step 5. Spot patching and light sanding. Now, once the primer is dry, check for any nail holes or any imperfections and fill them with spackle, or you can even use wood filler. Personally, I like using this spackle by 3M. It dries really fast and it doesn't shrink. Let it dry, then lightly sand everything using a 150 grit sandpaper or a fine sanding sponge. Now, as always, we're going to clean the surface again after sanding, just so that we can get rid of all of the dust and debris, and now our surface is ready for paint. Now, when it comes to painting, as always, I recommend applying 2 coats of high quality paint for the best coverage and durability. Now, if you want to check out the original video, I'll leave a link to that in the description box next to all of the products that I used.